Hey everyone, I'm Susan Barber. I'm from the Atlanta, Georgia area, and I read last year for the poetry prompt juggler question number one. So I wanted to share some of my insights that might help you to write a little better this year, just things that you can remember going into the exam. The first thing that I would say is remember that everybody connects with a poem in a different section of it. So don't be discouraged if you're reading the poem and you don't really understand the very first part of it. I think a lot of students feel like, oh, I have to start at the very beginning of the poem, but you don't. Whatever entry point that you connect with the poem, just start your analysis there and it will kind of flesh out from there. So don't get hung up if you don't understand every single line of the poem. Just go with what you know and build on that. The second thing that I would encourage you to look for and write about is the shift. There's shifts in every poem, and you look at things before and then after the shift. So look for the shift. And the great thing about identifying the shift is it's going to set you up to talk about complexity in the poem because you can compare the before and the after the shift. So you want to definitely identify with that. Another thing that I would encourage you to do is to organize your essay by insight into the poem rather than poetic devices. By doing this, it's going to make sure that you're covering the big picture thematic parts of the poem and not just identifying the devices. When you annotate your poem, and the AP poems are laid out perfectly in the center of the paper. So when you annotate your poem, if you'll annotate literally what's happening on the left and figuratively what's happening on the right, that sets you up really well when you start your analysis to look back and forth at the poem and see this is what's literally happening, but this is the bigger meaning of it. So then you're sure to cover both things, both of those things when you're analyzing. Another thing that I saw a lot was students referring to the poet thinks or the poet feels. Make sure you understand the difference between the poet and the persona in the poem and write accordingly with that. When you're using poetic devices, make sure that you don't just identify them, but you need to tell why they're important and how the poet uses them. So if you're identifying personification or a simile, it's great to identify that and give the textual evidence of that. But then you need to take the next step. Be sure you take the next step. It's the most important step, and tell why the poet uses that. What function is that serving in the poem? It's there for a reason, and part of your analysis is to tell what that reason is. Why would the poet use personification? Why would he use this simile? How does that connect to the bigger theme? Finally, I would just say you need to be sure to support your ideas with evidence for them from the text. And poems are perfect to do this because you can just pull out a word here, a word here. You don't have to write the whole sentence. Just pull out one or two words, three or four words, a phrase, and incorporate these phrases all throughout your writing. You just want your quotes and your evidence to just seamlessly flow in and out of your writing. So I'm wishing the best of luck to all of you taking the AP exam next week and hope some of these ideas will be helpful to you. Good luck.